All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into how to become more confident, especially, when you're talking to women.
Right.
And we're working with a single source this time,
Right.
but there's a lot of really interesting stuff in it.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of really good advice in this one.
So we're going to sort of break it down and see what we can get out of it, see if we can give our listeners some really great advice.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the source really emphasizes is the importance of silencing that inner critic that we all have. It's like we get so caught up in our own heads, worrying about how we're coming across that we sort of miss out on actually connecting with the person in front of us.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's easy to get trapped in that cycle of self-doubt.
Yeah, and what does the source suggest that we do to combat that?
Well, the key is to shift your focus outward. Instead of getting lost in your own head, you really want to tune into the other person. And it sounds simple enough, but the source suggests paying attention to even those tiny, subtle details, like their tone of voice, their body language,
Right.
All those little cues that can reveal a lot about what someone's really thinking or feeling.
So you're saying we should be almost like detectives, like we're gathering clues about the person that we're talking to.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's interesting is that when you're genuinely curious about someone else, you naturally become more present in the moment.
Mhm.
You're not rehearsing your next line or dwelling on past conversations.
Right.
You're just, fully engaged with what's happening right now.
Right. You're right there in the now.
Yeah.
I could see how that would make someone feel very seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that sense of presence is part of what the source is talking about when they say that this is something that women find attractive.
Absolutely. It's like this silent signal
Okay.
that says, I'm here with you and I'm interested in what you have to say. And that level of presence can be really powerful.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so silencing that inner critic, focusing outward,
Right.
that's a good first step. But this source doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
They also talk about embracing imperfection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I really liked that part of the source because I think we all feel that pressure to be perfect,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
especially in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, it's a universal struggle, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And what I like is that the source encourages us to ditch that pressure
Okay.
to be flawless because, let's face it, trying to be perfect all the time, it's exhausting
Yeah.
and it can backfire.
Okay, so how does imperfection make us more approachable?
Right.
Because, wouldn't people be more drawn to someone who, seems to have it all together?
Well, you'd think so.
Right.
But actually, I think the opposite is true.
Yeah.
Think about it. When someone seems too perfect, it can be intimidating.
That's true, yeah.
People are drawn to authenticity,
Mhm.
to those who are, comfortable showing their human side.
Yeah.
Imperfections, they make us relatable.
Mhm.
They show that we're not afraid to be vulnerable.
Okay.
And that can be incredibly endearing.
Yeah, I can see that.
The source gives us a great example of someone who mispronounces a name. And instead of trying to cover it up or, act like it didn't happen,
Yeah.
they just own it and turn it into a joke.
Mhm.
They keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so it's about being comfortable with those little missteps
Mhm.
and not letting them derail the whole interaction.
Mm.
And in fact, owning your mistakes and even laughing at yourself can actually make you more likable.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can think about a time when you've done that.
Oh, yeah.
When you turned an awkward moment into humor.
All the time.
How did it impact the interaction?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it always lightens the mood,
Yeah.
And you both end up, laughing about it. It's great.
Yeah, it definitely makes you seem more genuine.
For sure.
And it's refreshing to see someone who doesn't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So the source also talks about cultivating presence.
Okay.
And they don't just mean, physically being there. Right?
Yeah, no, it's more than that.
Like it seems to go a little deeper.
It's about being mentally and emotionally engaged in the moment.
Okay.
So much of the time our minds are racing with thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future.
Yeah.
But true presence is about being fully immersed in the now.
Right.
Giving the other person your undivided attention.
I can see how that ties back into what we were talking about before about silencing the inner critic.
Exactly.
If you're constantly judging yourself or worrying about what to say next, you're not really present.
You're not really there.
Yeah.
And the source suggests using mindfulness techniques like deep breathing, to help cultivate presence. Even something as simple as taking a few deep breaths before a social situation
Yeah.
can really help you to feel more grounded and focused.
Yeah, so instead of letting those anxious thoughts kind of take over, you're consciously choosing to be present.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing that the source talks about that I thought was really interesting. Playful banter.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Especially, when you're talking to women.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a really powerful way to keep the conversation fun and engaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Banter is a fantastic way to build rapport and create a sense of connection.
Right.
It's like a playful dance that keeps the energy light and flirty.
Right.
And it signals confidence and comfort, which makes the interaction more enjoyable for both people.
Yeah, the source gives this great example about teasing someone about their dislike of pineapple on pizza.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's like such a small thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can inject a little humor into the conversation.
Right.
Keep things from getting too serious.
Keep it light.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we do that? Like, how do we walk that line between being playful,
right,
and maybe crossing a line?
Yeah, well, I think it's all about reading the other person's cues.
Okay.
Are they smiling and engaging with the banter?
Yeah.
Or are they becoming withdrawn or defensive?
Right.
You have to pay attention to their body language and tone of voice.
Well, you're not just like throwing out jokes.
Right.
You're actually being sensitive to how they're responding.
Exactly. Yeah. And remember, banter should always come from a place of genuine connection and good humor.
Okay.
It's about finding common ground and sharing a laugh, even if it's about something as silly as pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that, to engage in playful banter, it kind of takes a certain level of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, to be able to tease someone, especially if you're attracted to them.
Yeah. It does. And that's what makes it so effective.
Okay.
Because when you can engage in that playful banter, it shows that you're not intimidated by the other person.
Yeah.
You're not putting them on a pedestal or trying too hard to impress them.
Right.
You're just being yourself and enjoying the interaction.
And that kind of self-assuredness is really attractive.
It is, yeah.
It's like saying, this is me, take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a pretty powerful statement.
It is a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another crucial point that the source emphasizes, releasing the need for validation.
Okay.
True confidence comes from within, not from seeking approval from other people.
That makes a lot of sense, but how do we actually do that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do we shift from, needing that external validation
right.
to finding that confidence in ourselves?
Yeah, it's a journey, but the first step is becoming aware of those moments when we are seeking approval. Do you find yourself, for example, fishing for compliments or constantly trying to impress others?
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, we've all been there.
I know. I've definitely caught myself doing that.
Yeah, so what do we do when we notice those patterns?
Yeah.
Well, the source suggests we dig a little deeper.
Okay.
Ask yourself why you're doing that. What are you hoping to gain?
Mm-hmm.
What are the underlying beliefs that are driving that need for validation?
Okay.
Maybe you have a deep-seated fear of rejection.
Oh.
Or maybe you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is determined by external factors like achievements or appearance.
So you're saying we need to, unpack those insecurities?
Yes, exactly. You need to unpack those insecurities and challenge those negative beliefs. Because the truth is, true worth comes from within.
What?
It's not about what other people think or say about you. It's about accepting and valuing yourself unconditionally.
That's a powerful concept.
It is a powerful concept.
Yeah, I can see how that would be so liberating to really believe in your own worth.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whether, you're getting that validation from outside.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the interesting part. The source suggests that when you release the need for validation, you actually become more attractive.
It's true.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So by needing less, we actually become more desirable.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you're not constantly seeking approval, you radiate this kind of quiet confidence that draws people in.
Mm-hmm.
You're not clinging to their every word or desperately trying to please them.
Right.
You're just being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of authenticity is magnetic.
Okay, so it's more than just saying the words. This is me, take it or leave it.
Yeah, it's about embodying that self-assurance in your actions and in your interactions. And speaking of deeper connections, the source also highlights the importance of vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
But isn't that like the opposite of confidence?
Not necessarily. You know, vulnerability is often misunderstood.
Right.
It's not about oversharing or dumping your emotional baggage on someone.
Right.
It's about being authentic and allowing yourself to be seen for who you truly are. And ironically, that kind of openness can actually make you appear more confident.
So it's about like letting your guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
And showing your true colors.
Exactly.
Even if they're not always, perfect.
Exactly. And, you know, the source gives a really beautiful example of this. Instead of giving a generic response to a question, imagine sharing a cherished childhood memory.
Okay.
You know, it's about revealing something personal and meaningful that gives the other person a glimpse into your inner world.
That's a really powerful example.
It is.
It shows, a level of trust
Right.
and a willingness to let someone in, which I think can be really disarming.
Yeah, for sure.
But I imagine it takes a lot of courage
It does.
to be that
Yeah.
vulnerable.
It does, especially with someone you're just getting to know.
Yeah.
Vulnerability requires a certain level of self-acceptance, you know? You have to be comfortable enough with yourself to share those deeper parts of who you are.
Right.
And that takes courage, no doubt.
So it's almost like you're saying, I'm not perfect, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I trust you enough to let you see this side of me.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And that kind of vulnerability can create a much deeper level of intimacy and connection.
Okay.
Because it shows that you're not afraid to let someone see beneath the surface.
This is all starting to make sense.
Yes.
We've covered silencing the inner critic, embracing imperfection, cultivating presence, playful banter, releasing the need for validation,
Yeah.
now vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's like we're building this toolkit
Yeah.
for confident and authentic communication.
You got it, and we're just getting started.
Okay.
There's so much more to unpack in the source material.
All right, listeners, buckle up. We'll be right back to dive a little deeper into these fascinating insights and explore how they can transform your social interactions.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.
All right. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about vulnerability and how powerful it can be in forming those deeper connections.
Yeah. It's funny because we often think of confidence as being like this sort of, unbreakable exterior.
Right.
But I think what we're learning here is that true confidence maybe actually comes from being willing to let people see our imperfections.
That's a great point, and that actually leads perfectly into the next layer that the source explores, nonverbal communication.
Okay.
It's amazing how much we convey without even saying a word.
Yeah.
You know, our bodies are constantly sending out these signals whether we realize it or not.
Right.
You know, it's like there's this whole unspoken language that we're all speaking even when we're silent.
Yeah.
And the source points out that these nonverbal cues, they play a huge role in how we're perceived by others,
Okay.
They can convey confidence, interest, even our emotional state. And sometimes our body language can actually contradict what we're saying verbally, creating a mixed message.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not enough to just say the right words.
Right.
We also need to make sure that our body language is aligned with our message.
Okay, so it's about congruence.
Exactly, yeah. Congruence is key.
Okay.
And the source specifically mentions the importance of posture.
Yeah.
An open and relaxed posture, not crossing your arms or hunching over, can convey confidence and approachability.
I've heard that before, but I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I catch myself slouching,
Sure.
especially if I'm feeling kind of nervous or unsure of myself.
Of course, yeah.
So I guess it's about, being more aware of those habits and consciously making an effort to project the image that we want to portray.
Absolutely. It's about being intentional
Okay.
with our nonverbal communication. Another key aspect is eye contact. Maintaining appropriate eye contact shows that you're present and engaged in the conversation.
Yeah.
But again, it's all about balance.
Okay.
You don't want to stare someone down and make them uncomfortable.
Right, right.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Okay.
between showing interest without being too intense.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, a genuine smile can go a long way.
Yeah.
A smile conveys warmth, approachability, positive energy. It can instantly make you seem more likable and trustworthy.
There's something about a genuine smile that's very disarming. It makes you feel welcomed,
Well, exactly.
and it's like an invitation to connect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the source even touches on the power of appropriate touch.
Okay.
A light touch on the arm or shoulder during a conversation can create a sense of connection and intimacy, but,
Yeah.
it's crucial to be respectful of personal boundaries.
Yeah, I feel like that's all about reading the situation, and gauging the other person's comfort level.
It is. It's all about reading the situation.
Okay.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about active listening.
Okay.
We touched on it briefly earlier, but the source really emphasizes that it goes beyond just passively hearing what someone is saying.
Right.
It's about fully engaging with both their words and their emotions.
So making them feel really heard and understood.
You got it.
Yeah.
Active listening involves picking up on those subtle cues,
Okay.
like tone of voice and body language, that really tell you how the other person is feeling. It's about being present in the moment and giving them your undivided attention.
The source mentions some practical tips,
Yeah.
like referencing something specific the person said, to show that you were paying attention.
That's a great technique
Okay.
because it demonstrates that you're not just waiting for your turn to talk,
Right.
but you're actively processing and engaging with what they're sharing. You can also try mirroring their body language or summarizing what they've said to make sure you're understanding them correctly.
Those are really good suggestions. I'm realizing now that active listening isn't as passive as it sounds.
It's not. No.
Like it actually requires quite a bit of effort and focus.
You're right. It's a skill that takes practice, but the rewards are well worth it.
Yeah.
When someone feels truly listened to, it strengthens the connection and it builds trust. It
Right.
shows them that you value their thoughts and feelings.
I'm starting to see how all of these elements that we've been talking about, they really work together.
They do.
It's like a puzzle where each piece contributes to the bigger picture
Exactly.
of confident and authentic communication.
And the source doesn't stop there. It also delves into the concept of leading the interaction.
Okay, now that sounds a little intimidating,
Yeah.
because doesn't that contradict like active listening, and letting the other person kind of share their thoughts and feelings?
Not necessarily. It's not about dominating the conversation
Okay.
or pushing your own agenda.
Okay.
It's more about gently guiding the flow
Okay.
in a way that feels natural and engaging for both parties.
So how do we do that? What does it actually look like to lead the interaction, but in a way that feels authentic,
Right.
and not forceful?
Yeah, the source gives some helpful examples.
Okay.
Things like sharing a story, suggesting topics, or even proposing a future hangout.
Okay.
It's about taking the initiative and demonstrating a level of comfort and self-assurance that can be very appealing.
I'm seeing that leading the interaction isn't about like being controlling. It's more about kind of creating a shared experience.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And, there are subtle ways to do this without being overbearing.
Okay.
You can ask engaging questions
Yeah.
that invite the other person to share their thoughts and experiences.
Right.
It's about drawing them out and showing genuine interest in what they have to say.
So it's really about striking a balance between, sharing and listening, kind of guiding the conversation,
Right.
but still making space for the other person to contribute.
Exactly. It's like a dance, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, but you're always moving together in harmony.
That's a beautiful analogy. I think it really highlights another key point that's woven throughout this whole source material.
Yeah.
The importance of authenticity.
You're right. This source really emphasizes that true confidence comes from being comfortable in your own skin, letting your true self shine through.
It's not about trying to be someone you're not or fitting into some kind of mold.
Right.
It's about embracing your imperfections,
Yeah.
letting go of the need for validation, and connecting with others on a genuine level.
And when you do that, you create this magnetic energy that draws people in, because ultimately people are attracted to those who are comfortable being themselves.
Yeah.
It's a breath of fresh air in a world where so many people are trying to, fit in or put on a facade.
It's so refreshing to encounter someone who's just genuine and authentic. It makes you feel like you can let your guard down.
Yeah.
And be yourself around them.
That's where the magic happens. That's where true connection and intimacy are born.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Yes.
We've covered so much ground, from silencing the inner critic to embracing vulnerability,
Right?
from mastering the art of nonverbal communication
Yeah.
to leading the interaction.
It's amazing how it all works together.
It is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like a blueprint for confident and authentic communication.
I agree.
Yeah.
And yet there's still so much more to explore
Yeah, there is.
within this source material.
Ep-
We haven't even touched on, some of the deeper implications
Yeah.
of releasing the need for validation and the transformative power of embracing your true self.
I'm eager to dive deeper.
Me
Yes.
too, and I know our listeners are too.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment to wrap up this deep dive
Okay.
and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dives into confident communication. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty energized by what we've uncovered so far.
It's been quite a journey. We've explored so many different angles of confidence, from those subtle nonverbal cues to, the surprising power of vulnerability. But for me, I think one of the most impactful concepts we talked about is releasing that need for validation.
I've been giving that a lot of thought since our last segment. It's such a simple concept, but it's really profound. So how does the source recommend we actually cultivate that inner sense of worth? The kind that allows us to let go of needing constant approval from others.
Well, it all starts with becoming more aware of those moments where we're seeking validation. Like, notice those subtle ways you might be fishing for compliments or, maybe trying a little too hard to impress someone. It's like holding up a mirror to your own behavior and asking yourself, why am I doing this? What's the underlying goal here?
I can definitely see how that self-awareness is crucial. You're basically shining a light on those ingrained patterns that we often don't even realize are driving our actions.
Exactly. And once you've identified those patterns, the next step is to really challenge those underlying beliefs that are fueling that need for validation. Maybe it's a deep-seated fear of rejection, or maybe you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to external things, like achievements or appearance.
I can see how those beliefs would make it really hard to feel confident in yourself without constantly seeking approval from other people. It's almost like you're always trying to prove your worth instead of just accepting it.
It's a very common struggle, that's for sure. But the source really emphasizes that true confidence comes from recognizing your inherent worth no matter what anyone else thinks or says. It's about developing that deep sense of self-love and acceptance that isn't dependent on external validation.
I'm starting to see how liberating that would be. It's like you're free from that constant pressure of trying to please everyone else. You can just be yourself, flaws and all.
And that's actually what makes it so attractive. When you're not desperately seeking approval, you naturally radiate this quiet confidence that draws people in. It's like you're saying, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. And that kind of self-assurance is magnetic because it's genuine.
You're not putting them on a pedestal.
Exactly.
And that can be so refreshing.
And that sense of self-acceptance can really help you navigate those inevitable moments when you don't get the validation you were hoping for. Like, imagine you're at a social gathering and you share a personal story, but the person you're talking to doesn't seem that interested.
Oof. Yeah, I've been there. It can be pretty deflating, especially if you were, hoping for a positive reaction.
Of course. But if you've cultivated that strong inner sense of worth, you can handle that situation in a whole different way. You recognize that their reaction is more about them than it is about you. Maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're just not good at expressing themselves,
So instead of taking it personally and spiraling into self-doubt, you can just accept it and move on.
Exactly. You can choose to let go of the need for their approval and just enjoy the interaction for what it is. And that kind of inner peace, that confidence, can actually make you even more attractive because it shows that you're not easily swayed by external factors.
It's like you're saying, I'm not going to let your lack of enthusiasm, dim my shine.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to circle back to that idea of vulnerability one more time. It's such a powerful concept, but it can also feel a bit intimidating. What advice does the source offer for really embracing vulnerability in our interactions? Well, the source reminds us that vulnerability isn't a weakness, you know? It actually takes a lot of courage to be open and honest, to share our true selves with others. And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create space for those deeper connections, for real intimacy.
It's about letting down our guard and letting people see the real us, imperfections and all.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this grand, dramatic gesture, you know? It can be as simple as sharing a childhood memory or talking about something you're really passionate about.
Those small acts of vulnerability can be so disarming. It's like you're inviting the other person into your world, and that builds a sense of trust and intimacy.
Exactly. It shows them you're comfortable enough with yourself to let them see beneath the surface. And that authenticity is incredibly attractive.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. From silencing that inner critic, to embracing imperfection, to mastering those nonverbal cues and tapping into the power of vulnerability. We've really explored so many facets of confident and authentic communication.
It's been quite a deep dive. And I really hope our listeners are walking away feeling empowered to put these insights into action.
I know I am. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought. Think about one specific skill from this deep dive that you'd like to focus on in your next conversation.
Maybe it's quieting that inner critic, or maybe it's being more intentional with your body language. Perhaps it's practicing active listening or taking the lead and guiding the interaction.
Whatever it is, remember that with practice, these skills can completely transform your interactions and help you become more confident and magnetic in any social situation.
So go out there and shine your light. The world is waiting to connect with the real you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.